Hi David, how are you?
Good. How you doing today?
I'm doing good, David. So friends, we have David Ruby here. Let me tell you a brief about him. So, David Ruby is a certified hypnotist through the International Association of Counselors and Therapists, IACT in short, a certified core transformation coach and the founder of Fox Valley Hypnosis. He specializes in helping athletes overcome mental blocks and performance anxiety to increase confidence, motivation, and improve their performance. So, David, please tell me how did this hypnosis, coaching, and everything started?
Well, my journey is actually I was a medical librarian for 11 and a half years, and I love skeptics because that was me for forever, like forever ago. I was very much a skeptic of hypnosis. I didn't know if it worked or not, and my job at the time was to work at a medical library. So doctors would ask me for information about all sorts of stuff, different types of physical therapy. Does this medication work with this condition with someone in this demographic, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I had an interest in this stuff, and I thought, well, I'm a pretty good PubMed jockey. I can go online and find stuff, right? So I went online and found lots of case studies, lots of evidence saying that it does work for stuff, and I was fascinated. And I'm married, and my wife was a little bit freaked out when I told her about this and said, "Hey, let's do some hypnosis," and she's like, "Hey, let's not."
Okay.
But that's where it started for me, and from then I went and took a bunch of trainings, practiced a bunch. I'm doing it for, I think it's been 9 years. I'd have to look when I actually started, and just kind of kept going from there.
Wow.
That's my origin story, so to speak.
Okay. And David, very typical question, but still curious to ask. You would have been an executive coach or a relationship coach, or you would have picked up helping people with quitting smoking or alcohol, but you have chosen to work with athletes. So,
Yes.
what motivated you to work with this category of people, David?
Well, if you worked with hypnosis or NLP, the analogy I received or I was told was they couldn't find which doctor in the phone books. They chose hypnosis as like the second best guess or second best option. So the way I start focusing on athletes is I find them they're very inspiring people to work with. Athletes tend to already have some resources available that most people don't have readily there because they've actually shown up for some kind of athletic event. They've decided to go and compete, to train, and they probably have some kind of successes and some kind of failures they've overcome. And I just find them fascinating. They're often coming from a very positive mindset already. And my job is, in a way, it's easy, is to help them to improve on something they're already good at. So I've worked with other things too. So that's not the only thing. If people come asking for help with weight loss or smoking or anxiety or anything else, those also can be useful as well. I can be useful for that as well. But athletes, I specialize in athletics because it's very inspiring and I really enjoy working with them.
Awesome. And what is the role of hypnosis in helping athletes to improve their performance, David?
Sure. Typically, athletes don't do mental training. That has changed a bit, but as far as the role of hypnosis for that, it's getting rid of baggage and helping them to either access or build up internal resources. So baggage, people that have anxiety about performing well in a match, or if they've had a loss, or if they've had some kind of injury, it's getting over that. So whatever's holding them back from being as good as they can be, help them be as good as, basically let go of that so they can just perform. One quick story is that a high school wrestler, super nice kid, really nice guy, was very, very good. But he would get worked up before his match. And I'm not going to take full credit because this kid was a really, really good subject. But after one session, he went from having this, like, he'd be so worked up, he'd be exhausted before the match. His coach he was napping before his match, his coach had to gently nudge him awake and say, your match is over there. And that was great. But also that anxiety, I found out, had actually been pervading his whole scholastic life. So after the one session, again, this is a very good subject. I don't want to take full blame or credit for this. After one session, he went from being very anxious in school and in wrestling and practice to being very much more relaxed. So being able to let go of that anxiety, that encompassed his whole life, which was great. Now for being more sourceful, that's things like future pacing, getting into peak performance states, being able to be laser focused on the match and training and putting it all together. Also, it's being able to work on improving your internal resources. So you're in a better, basically I think of it as being more sourceful overall, and then being able to apply that and kind of build off of it. So in a nutshell, that's kind of it.
Yes. And athletes, like any one of us, they too have some past failures, David.
Sure.
So each time they think of the future game, it could be tomorrow or next week, next month. The past games or something that come and hinder their thought process, or emotionally also it could be draining to them. Like, what if something I'm going to messed up and etc. In such situations, do you think hypnotherapy is going to help?
Yes. Yeah, for a few reasons. One, if they have this anxiety or worry or internal dialogue or feeling or whatever it is, you can work with that. You can work to release that. That way it's no longer holding them back. You can also work to have them look at that past failure. And if you're an NLP, you probably aware of Milton Erickson, there's no failure, there's only feedback, right? That's true in the extent that if you look at it as a failure, it's a failure. If you look at it as something you grow from, then that's a reframe, you can build off of that. Okay. So athletes, a past failure is in a sense, no big deal, right? Because you can look at what happened, learn from it, and then future pace that result, or you can re-imprint it for the peers in the class. So you can change what that past quote unquote failure meant, learn from that, build off of it, and then take something more positive going forward. But ultimately it depends how the person, the individual fighter or athlete or whatever, person, how they view that, and then how you can change what that means to them, and then turn that into a positive.
Okay, wonderful. And see, now I asked you the questions before the game. What all help one could seek with the help of hypnotherapists like you. Now, there are certain situations which happen while playing the game, David, like their self-talk or the match. They're losing the match and demotivation is happening, or at times they're totally zoomed out within the game, and they have to quickly get back into the right frame so that way forward they can do their best. So does hypnosis help them to do well in the match, not before and after? Whatever is going through, they can anytime come and meet you, but while they match still,
Yeah.
Like, can you please help understand how hypnosis helps while playing the game?
Yeah, one thing you can do during the future pacing, again, you may know this already in case any of the audience doesn't. So future pacing, you future pace, you kind of go into the future with the resources you have, and then go through matches or races or games or whatever the event is. It could be, you do it for dating, for instance, and getting shot down by someone you think's attractive. Well, future pacing, what happens if that fails? So if you're in a boxing match and you're starting to lose the match, or you lose 3 rounds in a row, what's your recovery strategy? How do you overcome adversity? You can kind of future pace that so that they have experience with having things that are difficult. And then where do you find your resilience? How do you re-access that flow state? You can also, with NLP techniques, do anchoring, which you may know, obviously. With anchoring, you have often have this, like, push your finger and thumb together and you can access flow, or do something like peripheral vision, where you go into a peripheral vision, you kind of take in the whole space and you can reset your emotions.
Okay.
Like in a boxing match, that could be useful, like between rounds, or even just like being aware of your physiology. That's not hypnosis as such, but being able to be aware of your breathing and your how you hold yourself and change your state like that, essentially, can be very useful. So there's hypnosis where you can future pace, overcoming adversity, being able to have familiarity, tapping into your own resources and doing that in the moment, and practicing that can be very useful. And there are also other tools you can use to kind of how to interrupt whatever you're doing difficult or different in that time, like your mental dialogue, your physiology. So there are lots of things you can kind of combine. It's not just hypnosis per se.
Okay. Awesome. So could you please also share if any athletes whom you have worked with? Of course, for the confidentiality reasons, we need not use the names, but there is some category of athletes I have seen, David, who have a pattern of getting injured.
Yeah. I worked with a lot of wrestlers.
Mhm.
I worked with some boxers. I worked with racers, like jogger, cross country stars, not stars, but a lot of student athletes. Worked with some amateur boxers. Worked with some baseball players. Those are the main sports that I remember specifically.
Yeah.
And then it can be anything. It's not a specific sport, but I've had people from different sports. Those are the main ones that I can call offhand.
Yeah.
But a lot of them have been student athletes, a lot of wrestlers. Those are my main ones, are wrestlers and fighters.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So my question was, David, some people have this pattern of getting injured. So could we help with hypnosis to break this such repetitive patterns, David?
Say it again.
Some people, especially athletes, they have a repetitive pattern of getting injured before the match, or like there is a thing I have observed, there is a pattern. So does hypnosis help to break such repetitive patterns? It could be behavioral patterns or getting injured or certain thought patterns. So does hypnosis help in such situations?
I think it would depend what's causing the injury. If it's something physiological, that I don't have as much experience with. There are different opinions on that. Some people might have different opinions than mine. What's causing the injury? Is it something as far as their habits, their preparation, their recovery, things they're doing as far as rehab, prehab? So it can help as far as changing behaviors or in getting over injuries. I've had a few people where they were getting over injuries and trying to get rid of the stress involved with that. So with that, absolutely. Anything as far as what's causing the injury, if it's something behavioral or something with the body itself, or the need to do something different, that I would probably outsource to the trainer, or at least I would defer to, what's causing it. Most of what I deal with is the mental aspect of, say, getting over injuries. That can be a big one. Or changing behaviors to make sure they're doing the proper training, stretching, recovery, resting, whatever, to avoid re-injuring things or avoid injury in the first place. So in that case, it kind of depends.
Okay. Okay. And any suggestions for athletes, David, about using hypnosis or mental training?
Most of what there's a quote that I'm blanking on that I'm going to be paraphrasing, but that sports are 99 or 90% mental, 10% physical.
Mm-hmm.
That's not entirely true, because if I go and play Michael Jordan and I'm totally convinced I'm going to win, well, he's still got a height advantage and lots of skills I don't currently have. But athletes spend most of their time focusing on the physical part, the physical training, their strength, conditioning, sports drills. They don't spend as much time on the mental aspects, on mentally practicing, mentally rehearsing, getting to positive resource states, getting to flow states. And that's something hypnosis and NLP can be very, very good at. And also, like you said, if they have losses or they have an injury they're trying to get over, there's a certain determination and certain grit to getting over those things that most people just don't build that resilience. They don't necessarily know what to do whenever they have something go wrong, or they don't know how to plan success. And hypnosis can be great for that. You're training your mind how to act, how to be, how to respond, how to get yourself in more resourceful states, and how to do things differently when things don't go well. So yeah, I think there's a great possibility for people to be better than they have been. That's the way people generally don't do it.
And any suggestions to fellow hypnotherapists and coaches, David, based on your experience?
As far as that's a great question. For other therapists and people that are doing hypnosis and NLP, working with athletes it's very rewarding. I got into athletics because it's very inspiring. They're a lot of fun. They're very rewarding. And when you hit the gym, it's great inspiration whenever you, this is a great story for me, at least. I worked with a boxer who he was really, really working very, very hard. And he had this moment where he asked himself, am I working hard enough? Or can I be working harder? And the answer was, well, yes, he could. So we worked on having him view that as basically, that's a sign to push yourself, because that's where greatness happens. Whenever you're at that point where it sucks and you really, really want to quit, but you know you can push through it and you do it, he did. And we worked on part of the mental aspect with hypnosis and the training, mental conditioning, to get him to view that as that's your opportunity. That's where you become great. So for me, that's inspiring, because I saw this guy really push through some barriers. He knew he could do it, and he did it, which was for me very inspiring. And also when I hit the gym the next, better believe I was pushing myself just as hard as him, because I didn't want this guy to be outworking me, for his tournament, and then just like me, just relaxing and not pushing myself as hard as I could be. So it was very inspiring watching him succeed, and inspiring for me to actually turn that on myself and, work around issues.
Wonderful. So, David, it was awesome. It was a very nice experience to know about how you started off, and doing an amazing job. It was wonderful talking to you, David. And thank you very much for your time and valuable advices to athletes as well as coaches.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you very much, David.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks.